Hello and welcome to another episode of Who Knew in the Moment, the podcast. I'm your host, Phil Friedrich, and today I am honored to have Ryan Gardner with me. Ryan is the founder of BuckedUp, which, if you haven't heard of it, is one of the fastest growing and one of the largest supplement companies. They're also growing into the energy drink space and great paraphernalia, and we're going to talk a lot about the growth of the company. But one thing I think you're going to hear in Ryan's journey today is if you're willing to take an opportunity before it is obvious, it will pay off for you if you work the system. So, Ryan, thanks so much for being on today.
Well, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
You bet. So, to get started with your story, you're from Utah and grow up on a farm, and one of the jobs that you did was you sold eggs door to door. So, talk a little about being young, getting out there and cutting your teeth in some door to door sales.
Yeah, we were taught early on that we're going to provide for ourselves, basically. So, we lived on a farm in Clearfield, Utah. We had, acres of land across, and I think we did about 3 acres was our garden. Basically, we were providing for ourselves. We grew corn, tomatoes, beans, all of, basically everything that you could possibly grow, we were growing. And then we also had about 50 to 60 chickens laying eggs every single day. So we were selling corn on the cob, we were selling tomatoes, we were selling eggs door to door.
Yeah.
And it was also like a subscription service. So people would, our neighbors would almost go, "Hey, I want a dozen eggs every Monday." And we would deliver a dozen eggs every Monday. So it was great. So we got taught how to work hard, and then we also got taught how to sell at the same time.
Absolutely. Now,
So,
growing up in that dynamic, I'm a big fan of work ethic. And I think, in the world of agriculture, there arguably isn't a better, way to grow work ethic. But, for you, having parents that started a business and, were kind of running that way, what were some things early on that you noticed as a child in growing up in that environment?
look, we didn't really know what we were doing at
Yeah.
the time, honestly.
Yeah.
When you grow up, my dad was just one of these, you know, farm guys, and he just said, "This is what we're going to do," and that's what we did. I mean, we were kind of held under a thumb and said, "You're not going to have a whole lot of choices here. This is what you're going to do, and this is how it's going to be done." And we just fell in line, and that's how we did it. So, he taught us, looking back, there was a lot of things that he probably could have done differently, but there was a lot of things that he could have done really well. In fact, I have to say we actually work a lot harder than most people. I mean,
Yeah.
we're constantly working, um, you know, despite what my wife likes me to do, but we do work a lot,
Yeah.
and but there was sometimes in that he could have done things differently as well. My brother Jeff, I have an identical twin brother that I run Bucked Up with. He forgot to feed the chickens for about 7 days. And my dad's kicking his butt on the way out. Can't believe he didn't feed the chickens. The chickens are going crazy, basically eating each other because they're out of food and water,
Yeah.
eating their eggs and everything else. And on the way out, my dad's kicking his butt on the way out. And my brother Jeff blocks one of his kicks. And with cowboy boots, it broke his arm. And so, in now today's day and age, you couldn't get away with that,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
But back then, they took him to the hospital and said, "Hey, he forgot to feed the chickens. I was kicking his butt and he blocked it." So that's that,
Yeah.
and so my dad was a pretty intimidating guy, but but he taught us how to be responsible, wake up
Yeah.
on time. We're early risers. We go to bed early too, because if you wake up early, you get tired. So
Yeah.
so we do go to bed a little bit earlier than most, like 10 o'clock, 10:30. And by that time, 6 o'clock comes around, you're wide awake.
Yeah.
So, but he taught us how to work, and we work hard.
I love
So,
that. Now, speaking of your brother, being identical twins, I would say that bred a competitive nature between the two of you. And,
absolutely.
and to say you ended up in business to get together, we'll get to how that came to be, but might have seemed like a long shot. But you made a really interesting comment. You said, although we were super competitive, within 5 minutes of a disagreement or within 5 minutes of being frustrated, typically we could come back together and be good, just fine. So talk
Yeah.
about, that competitive nature and, with sports and all that
Well, I
growing
think
up.
I love being competitive, even with other competitors out on the market, I want to beat them, right?
Yeah.
And it was probably, because I was born with an identical twin brother, we've competed against, it's like competing against the mirror. But just think if you had two of you, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? And the synergy and the stuff that you could get done. Even though I'm called the CEO here at Bucked Up, we basically have two CEOs. It's
Yeah.
me and my twin brother, and we run the company,
Yep.
together. And, there's always disagreements, but with brothers and twin brothers, especially, we'll fight it out. I mean, I got sent to Alaska for 3 months during my 10th to 11th grade summer because we were fighting so much. And we would fight 4 or 5 times a day. But in 5 minutes, we're like, hey, let's go back at it. Let's play. We were playing basketball out on our driveway. We're very competitive people. So we had that ingrained into us from the womb, I guess. So
I love it. Now, speaking of growing up, as part of a faith journey is
mhm.
common in Utah. You go off on a mission for a couple of years, and so talk a little bit about that, season of life. I would imagine that that can be a hard time of life. I mean, you're young and just you're going out and
Absolutely.
doing that, but at the same token, it's kind of what you're called into.
Yeah, and they send you out at the right time. You're in the prime of your life. You've got hormones raging. It teaches you a lot of about self-control and
Yeah,
how to bridle passions and things like that. Plus, you're with a guy all the time for 2 years, right? So
yeah,
you're with a companion, right? But like I said, there was several times that I would be I'd fight with my companion and they would hold against me for the whole day. And I'm like, what the heck? What are you doing? You're still mad at what happened in this morning? But, for us, we get over things really, really quickly and we move on and
yeah,
but a mission does teach you how to adapt and learn how to live with someone else, right?
yeah.
It also teaches you how to be selfless, serving others, and it teaches you a lot about life in general. So you get a lot of experience that you wouldn't anywhere else. But to be out on your own, you're paying your own way to be out there for 2 years from 19 to 21
Yeah.
was the years that I was out. My son is actually out right now and he's serving in Riverside, California.
Oh,
And they start at 18 to 20 years old.
okay.
The maturity and the wisdom and what you learn being on your own and you find out who you really are. And the best part about it is you can be whoever you want. And
Mm,
that's what I love about it is when I went out on my mission, I'm like, hey, I don't care what people thought about me, who I was when I was in high school. I get to start all over. This is like a
yeah.
brand new slate, and I get to do and be whoever I want to be out here on my mission. And you prove it. You go out there and you work hard and you have success on your mission, and you learn to how to do different things on your mission that you wouldn't get the experience any other way. But it was awesome. It was a great experience.
I
I
love
use
that.
I actually use a lot of the stuff that I learned on my mission and apply it to my business today,
Yeah.
like having a vision, applying goals, working hard, planning. There was a lot of stuff that we did that I apply to my business today.
I love that. Now, for you, as you're finishing your mission, you come back, Utah Valley, and then we get into sales. And it wouldn't shock anyone that you got into sales after we talked about,
Right.
selling eggs door to
Right.
door and then, after a
And
mission.
then the
But
mission, yeah.
yeah, talk a little about deciding to go into sales as a career. And one thing I'll mention, and would love to hear your insight there is if that was something that parents were excited for you with, if that was something where they're like, hey, is sales really what you want to do? I think sometimes anytime you go into a career that maybe has variable income, parents have certain thoughts around, hey, is this your best choice?
Right, right. My parents, I started going to UVU, Utah Valley University. At the
Okay.
time, it was called UVSC, so Utah Valley Community College.
Yeah.
And I realized very quickly that it wasn't for me. You know what I mean? After about a year and a half of school, I just said, this is not for me. If I'm trying to figure out ways to get around the system and stuff at school. And I'm like, no, this isn't for me. And
Yeah.
I had a buddy that I actually served a mission with. He was
Okay.
one of my mission companions. He called me up and says, Ryan, we're killing it over here on this sales floor. So I said, oh, let me check it out. And I started working on this sales floor. And I'm sure my parents were like, oh, it sells. But it didn't matter. They just wanted me to be successful. Just
Hmm.
like my kids, I
Yeah.
just want them to be successful in whatever avenue they do.
Yeah.
Um, but I'm sure my parents probably went, what are you doing? But what was interesting is that within a couple weeks, I was already making more than I was making in a month. And I
Wow.
still had a job working while I was going to school because I
Yeah.
had to provide for school and pay for my cars and everything else. And I was doing really well.
Yeah.
But I started working on this sales floor, and I quickly said to my twin brother, "Hey, Jeff, you ought to come over here. It's a really good opportunity." I actually asked him, "Hey, how much did you make last month?" Last month. And he's like, I made $1,500. I go, I made 2 grand this week.
Yeah.
So at the time I was like, hey, this is great. And this was, 20, 30 years ago. It was awesome. So,
Absolutely.
so I invited Jeff to come and work for me. And we were both making over 100 grand, on the sales floor, selling coaching and mentoring.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of our start. But then I finally realized I'm like, the guy who's making all the money is the guy that's providing us the leads, right?
Yes.
The guy who is provide and I just had the balls to ask him, hey, I need a job. Like, I want to learn how to produce leads. And the lead provider was like, wow, that's pretty awesome that you're willing to come up and ask me for that. Let's have you go to work. And
Yeah.
so I ended up working for a gentleman in St. George for 2 years, learned how to produce leads. And then I finally got smart and said, hey, I don't want to do this specific niche for my whole life. I want to produce leads for everyone and drive sales for everyone. So I came back and started an affiliate network with my twin brother,
Yes.
started driving traffic for people. So people would come to us with a product or a service, and we would drive traffic to them.
Now, at that phase, because this is early 2000s, which is
Yep.
is helpful because internet is becoming very popular, right? But
Barely
at the
started.
same token, it's also very new. So talk a bit about, your tactic to, strategize and I don't want to use the term convince, but maybe have people see the value in the unconventional way of doing things, right? Instead of, hey, you should, market on a billboard, or hey, take out this radio ad, how you were kind of helping businesses see that next level of business.
Well, it was all driving traffic online. And the best part about Utah is everybody talks and everybody knows everything, right?
Yeah.
And the thing
Right.
is once we started with one or two people and we were very successful driving traffic for them, they just told everybody else and their dog. And I had like 4 to 6, I had 4 guys initially, me, my twin brother, my youngest brother, and my brother-in-law all working for us. And then we hired a programmer and a designer. So we had 6 people, but we were generating, $20 million in revenue, $30 million in revenue a year,
Yeah.
driving traffic for people. And we were doing really, really well. And then we finally got smart and said, hey, if I'm doing it for if I'm doing it for these guys, why aren't I doing it for my
Yeah.
own business? And we said at that point, hey, we're not going to do it for anybody else unless we own a piece of the company. And the
Yeah.
very next week, a guy came in with a product called L-arginine. And that's where we ended up saying, hey, we would like to be part of this business. You just make sure there's product in stock. We'll do the website, we'll drive the traffic. You just make sure that there's product in inventory available.
Yeah.
We agreed. He was doing about $600 or $700 a day online. And within a couple of weeks, like 3 or 4 weeks, we were doing $3,700 a day online after 1 month. And
Yeah.
it did really, really well. And we made millions of dollars driving traffic to this site. Well, while we were doing that, we were also buying and selling domain names.
Yes.
And we were building websites for people. Well, we bought a domain name called larginine.com. And while we were doing L-arginine, they would Google at the time, they would reward you for having an exact match domain. So if somebody went online and typed in L-arginine,
Yeah.
our product would show up because it would show up first because we own the domain name L-arginine.
Yeah.
Well, about a year went by and we bought another domain name after reading a Sports Illustrated article,
Yep.
and it said deer antler spray is banned in Major League Baseball. And we were like, what's deer antler spray?
Yeah.
But of course, we went to GoDaddy, and sure enough, the domain name was available for $8. And
Yep.
we purchased it. And we found a manufacturer in Florida that has deer farms that they sell the deer antler velvet extract. And we were producing bottles of deer antler spray. And we said, hey, this is just like L-arginine. We're going to kill it.
Yes.
Well, we didn't realize it, but hardly anybody reads Sports Illustrated.
Yeah.
They weren't, nobody was really reading about it. And we were selling like 5 to 10 bottles a day,
Yes.
and we were like, wow, I bought 3,500 bottles. This will take us like 30 years to sell all these.
Yeah.
And we just kept going. We kept going. And about 8 months later, Ray Lewis got accused of taking it right before the Super Bowl. And
Yep.
that's when our sales went crazy. The first day, we sold out of every single bottle day
Yeah.
one. Ray Lewis got accused of taking it. So we got to give our hand out to Ray Lewis for doing that.
Now,
But
so through those different stories,
yeah,
something that I'd love to hear a little perspective on is you said, when I was on my mission, one of the things that I did there was I had to have a vision and I had to have a plan. And as you say those stories, it almost just sounds, whimsical, like, oh, I bought this, URL and then it just happened to explode one day. And it's like, well, there was that element, right? Like, yeah, all of a sudden, Ray Lewis is, but I'm sure going into it, you had a bit more of a strategic plan of how you were going to sell it, even though it didn't live up to the plan. Talk a little bit about coming in with a game plan, but then realizing you could have the perfect plan, but until the dominoes start falling, you don't know how the perfect
exactly.
plan plays out.
You don't know how any of this plans out.
Yep.
Although I do believe that if you're working hard
Yeah.
and you're always trying to improve and
Mm.
learn new things, that opportunities will be presented to you.
Yeah.
And then you just got to be able to take advantage of those opportunities. Just like this, just like the L-arginine experience, just like deer antler spray.
Yeah.
We'd had it planned that we were gonna sell millions
Yeah.
right off the bat, but that isn't the way it always works.
Right.
And nobody was reading Sports Illustrated, but at the time, you're like, hey, maybe this is good, maybe it's bad. I don't know. We're going to have to see. And it just so happened to be that Ray Lewis got accused of taking it right before the Super Bowl. This ingredient, deer antler velvet extract, helps you recover and repair really, really quick. And that's why they ban it in professional sports. They feel like it gives an athlete an edge.
Yeah.
So what ended up happening is we just simply took advantage of an opportunity.
Yep.
We saw an opportunity. Even though it didn't work out, it eventually worked out for us.
Yes.
Then eventually we got into GNC. And that's really what happened is once Ray Lewis got accused of taking it, all of a sudden our sales went crazy.
Yep.
And the next day, GNC calls us and says, how fast can you fulfill 30,000 bottles? And we were off to the races at that point.
Yes. Now, to that point of the story, that's one of those examples where I'm sure you say yes, and we'll figure out how on the back end because I don't actually know how we'll get you 30,000 bottles, but the answer is yes. Let me, now make a million phone calls to figure out how it's possible. But talk about that willingness for people to say yes. I think once again, so many times we can just overthink it or we can't see the logical way on how all the dots connect. And sometimes you just have to say yes, work your ass off and, figure out how it's going to
Right.
happen.
Right. And I think that's what we did is we just trusted the process and
Yeah.
trusted, hey, it doesn't matter what it is, we're going to accomplish it and get it done. And that was part of the drive and being competitive and how we were raised is, hey, we'll just get it done. So
Yes.
when GNC said, hey, how fast can you fill 30,000 bottles? I'm like, I can probably fill it as fast as possible. Let me find out. So I called my manufacturer as soon as I got off. And I said, hey, this is Ryan with Deer Antler Spray. He goes, I thought I'd be hearing from you. How many do you need? And I said, I need 50,000 bottles. How fast can you get them to me? He goes, I can get them to you in 3 weeks. And so, of course, I just called GNC back and said, hey, 3 weeks, I'll have all these bottles to you. And then I also ordered some extra so that when you do start selling, that we have some inventory available. So that's kind of how we started with the whole process
Yeah.
and started down that road. But there's a lot of things that I learned even going through that process. Like for instance, I was quick to sign an agreement with GNC,
Mm,
and I wish I would have had legal help me out with that,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because they were able to take advantage of certain things that I didn't realize. At the time, I'm just signing things like I didn't even read it, right? I'm like
Right.
just excited. Oh, I'm in GNC. I'm signing this.
Yep.
Well, if I had it all over again, I would have retaken a look at that agreement and made sure that it was a little more fair, right?
Yeah.
But, down the road, we were able to change some things and get some things done. We started going to expos and with deer antler spray, and we were like, what is everybody selling here?
Yeah.
Saw that everybody was selling a pre-workout. And
Yes.
we said, hey, man, what's in this pre-workout? Nobody could tell us what was in a pre-workout. And we were like, hey, let's create a pre-workout and let's do a game-changing formula where we're going to disclose exactly what's in that formula.
Yes.
And so that's kind of how we started is we said, we have an awesome product.
Yep.
It tells you exactly what we put in it, and we're going to use the clinically proven ingredient at their clinical dose.
Yep.
And not only that is we taste better than everybody else.
Yes.
And we were off to the races. We started and we crushed it. And now look where we are. We're producing energy drinks. We just released a lightly carbonated protein drink.
Amazing.
All these things are innovative products to the market. Like no one has a lightly carbonated protein drink, which I'm sure once we release, I
Yeah.
guarantee within 3 or 4 months, there's going to be others on the market. But
Yeah.
ours taste awesome. They almost taste like an energy drink. And, last year we sold 65 million energy drinks last year in 2024.
Isn't
Uh,
that top like 8 or 7 or 8 in the country of
yeah,
all?
I think we're number 9 in the country right
Amazing.
now. Yeah, of
Amazing.
all the energy drinks. And we're actually the only brand that is not purchased by a Pepsi, Coke, or a Dr. Pepper.
Yeah.
Big strategic, companies that would be huge. But we're like the only one in the top 15 that is not like you know, and hopefully there's some good signs to come. But
Yeah.
we're the only ones that really not. Red Bull, there's Red Bull too.
Yeah.
Red Bull, Monsters owned by Coke, things like that. So, but that's just where we are right now. And looking back, obviously looking back, my wife says all the time, can you remember when we went to the warehouse and fulfilled 30 orders in one day? And we
Yeah.
thought, holy cow, this is crazy. Yeah, same thing. So it's really moving and humming. So,
So on that, note, and I want to just ask a quick question on the GNC side of things. As you're talking about that, I think that happens frequently for people is they get so excited about this big opportunity, right? The attraction of having a GNC relationship that either they're not savvy enough and they actually start a almost unprofitable business venture just to get their name, on a shelf. Or two, like you said, I enter into a contract that isn't very favorable to me. It was still profitable, but it wasn't in my favor. So then, you wake up a year, 2 years down the road, and fortunately for you, it did really well. You branched out, made a bigger business. But for a lot of people, that could be the end of the business, right? Because you
absolutely.
get so
It can
into
swamp
the
you.
commercial and it's just like, and now we're done. So talk a little bit about that and maybe a word of advice to someone
Well,
outside of having good legal counsel. But
yeah.
a word of advice like don't just get super excited about, the big name for
Yeah.
big name's sake.
Well, here's another thing is that there's a lot of people that come to me and says, "Hey, can you help me get into GNC? Can you help me get into Walmart? Can you help me get into, Vitamin Shop?" Of course I can. Of
Yeah,
course, I have all the contacts and I can
right.
get you. But the issue is when you have a product, have you built up the momentum and the velocity that when you put it on the shelf that it'll sell? So I
Yeah.
think that's really the question is a lot of people go, "Hey, I just want to develop a product and put it at GNC." The
Yep.
problem is no one knows who you are. So you have to build a brand. And we
Yep.
started out online. Obviously, we knew how to drive traffic. So we were doing a lot of it online
Yeah.
and built an ambassador program like affiliates,
Yep.
and we started building this huge community and building it that when it did go into GNC, everybody had already seen it online and
Yep.
they were like, "Oh, I've heard about this, I want to try it." So they would grab it.
Yeah.
If you don't have the brand awareness, then people aren't just simply I mean, it may be lucky that you go in and get people to buy it, but they're going to buy things that are visible and that are marketable, that's been out there in the market. So, my advice is, hey, don't get too quick
Yeah.
to say, hey, I've made it if I got into GNC, because it still has to sell. And one thing that you don't realize is that, hey, if it expires or it's not selling, they can immediately send it all back and
Right.
claw back money that they sent to you.
Yep.
So you have to be really, really careful. And my thing is yeah, if I had to look back, I probably would have adjusted a few things, like making sure that, hey, if they don't pay you within their terms that they've dictated,
Yeah.
what happens? Instead, there was a time where I couldn't even do anything. They could take as long as they wanted to pay me, but there has to be some type of terms
Yep.
that are in place that says, hey, if you don't pay within 90 days, there's going to be interest occurring,
Yep.
and things like that. But, there was never any, I was young and excited and I started signing things that I probably shouldn't have. But I would definitely get legal to look at it. Nowadays, you could throw it into Chat GPT and say, hey, take a look at this contract,
Right. Right.
make it favorable for both sides.
Yep.
And it would pick out all the things that were bad. But, you know, back then we didn't have Chat GPT.
Yeah. Now, with the pre-workout as well, once again, you recognize a unique opportunity, but you do something that's very abnormal, right? And that is essentially, I'm going to be willing to just give you the secret ingredients now, right? Not exactly how to make it, but like, hey, here's everything I do. I mean, a company that's got an unlimited budget could probably figure it out pretty quickly once they have the ingredients.
Right.
But to your point earlier, I think it's when you have, a brand following, you feel comfortable being like, well, I can give this away knowing that the loyalty is within our customers, right? And once we have the loyalty of the customers, that's going to propel the brand. I don't need to be so secretive over here that a larger company's
Sure.
going to take it because they don't necessarily have the connections that we do.
So there was two things.
Yeah.
Number one is we saw a trend that people were going towards, like they were getting smarter online. Like we were reading some of the reviews and they're like, but what's in it? Like how much is in it? And
Yeah.
we were reading these reviews online and going, hey, why aren't they disclosing all of this? So we saw the trend that people were getting smarter online. They were looking up and becoming more educated about supplements. We said, hey, there's a need for a non-proprietary blend.
Yeah.
And we said, hey, we're going to do that. And number two, we feel like we're really good marketers and
Yeah.
we'll market the heck out of this
Yeah.
and we'll make sure that it works. You know what I mean? And we'll just beat them at marketing. So even if it's a big guy, because we did have friends come over and say, hey, if you do this, Cellucor or Optimum Nutrition is going to knock you off in 2 seconds. We're like, let them beat us at marketing.
Yeah.
And we're ready for the competition,
Yeah.
you know?
The
So
competitive nature comes out and says, oh yeah, bring it.
yeah, bring it on. So we were pretty confident in our abilities to drive traffic and bring brand awareness, that we could do really well. Even though we were, like, at the time the most expensive pre-workout on the market, we realized we needed to have some margin in there to be able to market and promote and really drive the eyeballs to the brand. And that's what happened. So
Yeah. Now, we talk about bucked up today, but originally mom and dad weren't necessarily huge fans of the term. And then as you talk about marketing and promotion, some of the names you've come up with are clever plays on words that,
yeah,
once again, mom and dad may not have been as big of fans of. But talk a little bit
yeah, we have
about,
to hide them. We have to
creating the
hide
name.
those things from our parents. Yeah. So my parents weren't fond of the name Bucked Up. I mean, coming from a pretty religious family, we
Yeah.
couldn't say any F words like fetch, flip, all that freaking thing. You couldn't say it because it represented the F word.
Right, right.
And we were like, oh, Bucked Up. They were like, you're not gonna name it that name. And we were like, it's catchy, it's marketing, it's marketable. They used to go around and say, hey, my boys own a supplement company. Now it rolls right off their tongue. My boys own Bucked Up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or they never even wanted to say the words Bucked Up.
Yep.
We also have other products and other terms that they weren't too happy with, but it's the way the
But
cookie crumbles.
yeah, but I think, once again, creating a neat slogan, one that's memorable, right, is part of the marketing, and I think so frequently, we talk about the Super Bowl as one of the, great examples of marketing, right, as an old school way. and a person gets done and they go, "What a dumb commercial." And yet
Yeah,
you go, "But that's the one you're talking about, right?"
that's the one we remember.
That's the one you're talking about. You're not talking about the one that was like, "Oh, very well shot," and so, you're like, "No, that was weird. Why did they do that?" And it's like, well, this is the thing everyone talks about, and there's an article that's going to be read by a million people that says this was the worst commercial in the Super Bowl. It's like, well, it just got way more eyeballs than it had before. So talk a little bit about, your guys' strategic kind of like eye-grabbing things that you do to, have that different conversation.
Well, we know that it's kind of come down to eyeballs,
Yeah.
right? And it's going to come down to brand awareness. Like we're at the point where we're starting to get involved with people like Conor McGregor, like Alex Eubank, like uh, there's some other ones that we're working with, very popular golf people as
Yeah.
well, that we're working with right now to build brand awareness,
Yeah.
right? And you like I said, is you can be on the shelves, but it's really got it all comes down to the velocity and how much that product moves.
Yeah.
And so it's coming down to brand awareness and education right now for us. And we're trying our best. Some of those things, just like naming certain products, it gets people talking about it, right? You're like, I can't believe they called that Mother Bucker,
Yeah.
that pre-workout Mother Bucker. And they're like, what did you say to me?
Yeah.
You know, and it was like, even when we first started with Bucked Up, I had our sales reps calling because we had a sales floor and we
Yep.
called them and they would call up supplement shops and go, hey, this is James with Bucked Up. Yeah, that's with a B.
Yeah.
But I remember hearing them say that, and I'm like, perfect. It's
Yeah.
getting their attention right away.
Yep.
They're like, "What did you say to me?"
Yeah.
No, bucked up with a B.
Yeah.
So as in Bravo. So
I,
those are the things that you got to have something that separates you from everybody else. You got to be different,
yep.
and that's why, like with the protein, lightly carbonated protein, this has not been done. And the lightly carbonated protein, it just makes it taste so much better, and it's different than what's out there on the market already. And somebody would like, hey, I'd rather drink it, I'd rather drink this than an energy drink at this point. You know what I
Yep.
mean? Has zero caffeine, lactose free. It's awesome, and you're getting 25 grams of protein, so it's great.
It's amazing.
Yep.
Now, for you guys, talking about developing new products, as you ventured into the energy drink space, you've been having so much success with the pre-workout. Unfortunately, the first round there was a little unknown element that caused us to have to
Oh,
smash
and
hundreds of
energy drink.
thousands of cans. So talk a little bit about, being excited about it and then being like, oh crap, we just spent all this money and now we've got to redo it.
Yeah, we launched energy drinks. We launched energy drinks right before FitCon in April. I think it was 2020 that we launched our energy drinks, and we were super excited for them to launch. And we were super like, oh, we're gonna take over with energy. And we launched them there, and we didn't realize that after about 5 days the masking agent falls off and you taste all the really bitter ingredients, and we were like, wow, this really stinks.
Yeah.
We had to make a judgment call, and that was probably at a crucial moment of our company that we had to call back like 200,000 cans
Yeah.
that we had started shipping out, and we called them all, recalled them, and we rolled them over with a big diesel truck in our parking lot. We were really upset because we was like, that was a couple $100,000 worth of energy drinks down the thing, but we said we really only have one shot at this.
Yep.
And I do believe that if we would have just kept going with it, we wouldn't have been as successful. And another thing is that I look at it both ways. I mean, if we were a year ahead, we'd probably be ahead of a lot of these other people too,
Yeah.
you know. But looking back, I think it was the right call.
Right.
I pretty much go by my gut and my instincts and say, hey, we got one shot at this. Let's just make sure they're really, really good. And that's what happened is we waited, and it was about a year later that we launched drinks. So
I love
and
it.
now so
Yeah. Well, so with that, you've talked many times today about you great work ethic, right? And you love to work and maybe even work too much if your wife was here commenting, right? But something that you did was eventually a private equity individual came to you and kind of talked about, hey, I don't think you need money. What you do need though is you should get some outside advice, or you should hire someone that's got some expertise in this area. And that really opened up, a whole new level of production for you guys. So talk a little bit about the decision to do that, because up to that point, it was really, the two of you, you and Jeff, right, making a lot of those big
There was
decisions.
probably 8 or 9 guys. We had some
Okay.
sales guys and sales reps and stuff
Yeah.
like that that came into the office. You know, um, yeah, but we were in a really small place. We had a warehouse that was fulfilling all the orders for us, a third-party logistics company. But we just said, you know, what you're referring to is we said, hey, we want to come out with energy drinks. I think it's the right time to
Yeah.
come out with energy drinks, and we're going to probably need some money to fund this. And we brought in a private investment banking company, and they said, hey, we'll take you out to the market to raise some funds. We would like to come in and see what your operation's all about. Well, after they saw everything, they came and they go, you want to know what the problem is? And I said, sure. They go, the problem's you. You're trying to be the CMO, the CFO. You're trying to be the COO. You're
Yeah.
trying to make sure all the shipments go out. You're trying to fulfill all your orders. Like, they started telling me you're the problem. And at that point, I'm like, yeah, you're right. I'm holding it back.
Mm,
It's time to hire. We
yeah.
were profitable. So when we hired somebody, we hired a CFO. The first thing we hired a CFO, he came in and goes, you guys don't need any money. You guys are profitable. You guys are doing really, really well. You don't need money to launch. Don't give up any equity of your company. And that's what we did. We said, no, we're not going to do it.
Yeah.
So we ended up just funding it ourselves and started going off to the races. Then, later on, we did hire the former CEO of Dr. Pepper,
Yes.
Gil Kassan, and he actually is helped us build out a distribution network, and that's why we were able to sell 65 million drinks before, last year.
Yeah.
So that was really great. So it was good stuff.
Now, now with scaling, right? I mean, you start as, hey, we got family members that are coming in on weekends to help us, fill orders. And now what? Today it's about 250 employees.
Yeah, we got almost 300 employees now. Yep.
So as you scale like that, I think one thing that can happen is you lose that, core of the company. So what do you do as, a founder and leader of the company to make sure that, hey, the principles of what Bucked Up is, right? And what we're trying to accomplish is felt all the way through, the 300 people.
Yeah, it's still a challenge. I'm not going to say it's
Yeah.
easy, but it's still a challenge because, you know, things change, and as you grow up, things change and things become more complex. And, you know, I'm not going to say it's the exact same. Even the culture was changing when these other bigger people were coming in, like, hey, how come I got passed up and skipped? And he's like, this is the former CEO of Dr. Pepper. That's why I got skipped.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know what I mean? But we have to adapt, and we got to
yeah.
learn to roll with it. And part of being on a mission, you learn to adapt with the different situations, and you learn to quickly move, and you move quick, and make the decisions. And so that's what we've been known for, and that's what we've done. And so it's still tough. Culture is tough, and we want to make sure that it's coming from the top down. Like, we're excited, we're passionate about our company, and we want to have fun at the same time of working hard. It's sometimes tough to do.
I love that. Now, a second item just within, the business and where you're at is so many business owners grow a business and they're just thinking about the exit strategy, right? Like, oh man, I can't wait until someone will come buy us. Like once we hit this amount of revenue, then I'll get a multiple. And then there's the other type of business owner that says, I'm just on mission because I believe in what we're doing so much that, you know what? Everyone has a number and you can say that, but it's like I'm not counting the dollars to see, oh, well, when I hit this much revenue, then I'll go to the PE firm and then I'll get my big payout. And you guys just seem to be so into it because of the mission and the products. So talk a bit about that for you of, you could probably retire today. But hey, I love what I'm doing, right? And I believe in growing the business and seeing what it can become.
And that's the thing, is if you're doing something that you're passionate about, it
Yeah.
makes coming to work a lot easier. I'll tell you that much right now. Like I like doing it. Like I mean, going, hey, if I sell, then what am I going to do? You know, I mean, I have a lot of other ideas, but I would rather like, hey, I want to grow this. I want to become, you know, at the first I was like, hey, I just want to be, I just want to be no, like, let's see if this can be like Coca-Cola or Dr. Pepper or
Yeah.
something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I want it to be a household name that when somebody goes, hey, have you heard of Bucked Up? Yes. And that's what it's become. In fact, we go all the time. We go different places and people see the logo and or they recognize you and you're like, wow, that's pretty cool, you know? And what's nice is my kids get to see it as well. You know,
Yeah.
they see that we built a brand and that they could do it too. If they put their, if they put the effort in, they put the time in and they do it, they could do whatever they put their mind to. They could do it. So
I love that. Now, I don't know anything about how big of a, farming operation you grew up in, but something that I'm always intrigued by is when, a parent has success and then they're raising kids. There's a certain element of the way your parents raised you that has given you the work ethic you have today. Um, and I'm sure there's an element of you that wants your kids to have that, and yet they might be growing up in a different environment with the business that you guys have. So, how do you kind of balance that of, man, I really want to instill this work ethic in them, and at the same token, I maybe don't want to have them, have
it's,
to deal with
it,
all the stuff that you had to deal with growing up. So, talk a little bit about that balancing act for you as a parent.
times have changed
Yeah.
and things are different. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? And they're just different from when I was raised. You know what I mean? From when it was. I mean, and to raise kids, there's always going to be these challenges, and there's always going to be things. But as long as you're willing to work at it, again, if you're willing to work at the relationship that you have with your kids, your wife, I think anything's possible and everything can be successful as long as you put the time and the work into it. But it's tough. Like with social media, with people seeing other people being successful off of nothing. And they're like, oh, I think I can do this too. I just want to be a social media influencer. You're like, no way.
Yeah.
Like the chances are slim to none. But
Yep.
if you put your mind to it, you could do it. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So, but it's just different. The way people are, the kids, we hire people and they're just like, hey, I need a mental day,
Yeah.
a mental break day,
Yeah.
and I'm like, what? Like I've never heard of this. Like, what are you talking about? But you gotta conform and you gotta be willing to, you gotta have culture as well. And you gotta realize, hey, not everyone is you,
Yep.
and not everyone's built that same way. You know what I mean? And hopefully you're looking for the right people that align with your vision and your goals that you hire the right people. And that's really, really important.
Absolutely. Now, I'm a firm believer in not believing in like regrets of things because it's like whatever happened, it taught me a lesson. Well, if I'm open to learning a lesson, right? Everything has taught me a lesson. But for you, as you just reflect on, your guys' business and your journey, are there any one or two things that in hindsight you're like, if I did this again, here's one or two things I would have done differently or I would have done at a different time in the business?
I probably would have been a little less frugal and hired,
Mhm.
people earlier
Yeah.
on and listened to people with experience.
Yeah.
I think that would have helped catapult us even further ahead than we are now. So looking back, that would probably be the only one. But things happen for a reason and timing happens for a reason too. So I'm not one that's big on, hey, if can I go back and change? It's happened for a reason. And this
Yep.
is the way it is. You know what I mean? So just
Absolutely.
super super excited and it's a fast growing business even now. We do a couple 100 million a year and it's doing great. We're profitable, we have strong EBITDA, we have lots of employees, we have a lot of new innovative items coming out. This is the year of protein, so we do have the protein drinks, we have uh, protein meat sticks, we have protein popcorn coming. There's just a lot of great innovative products that are coming out. I'm just excited to see where it goes.
I love it. Well, Ryan, I'm so thankful for your time and sharing your journey, and excited to continue to watch the company. And hopefully, here in 3 years, we can do this again and talk about, the meat sticks, the protein, and being one of the top sellers of that.
Yep. Well, thanks for having me on and thanks for the time. And I hope your listeners enjoy it.